War has always been a business, but in modern times, a new player has emerged in the global battlefield: private military companies, or PMCs. These organizations are not tied to any nation, but rather operate as businesses, providing military services for a price. Unlike traditional armies that fight for national security, PMCs fight for contracts, making their primary motivation profit rather than patriotism. But how exactly do they make money? What allows them to thrive in the chaos of war? And what are the consequences of allowing private entities to wage war for financial gain? To understand this, we must first look at the history, operations, and economic models that make war one of the most lucrative businesses on the planet. The origins of private military company smokes are not a new phenomenon. Mercenaries have existed for thousands of years, dating back to ancient Rome and the Middle Ages, where hired fighters served kings, nobles, and whoever could afford them. But the modern version of PMCs as corporate entities began to take shape in the late 20th century, particularly after the Cold War. As global conflicts shifted from traditional state-on-state warfare to civil wars, insurgencies, and asymmetric conflicts, governments started to outsource military functions to private firms. One of the first well-known PMCs was Executive Outcomes, a South African company that operated in the 1990s and played a key role in conflicts in Angola and Sierra Leone. By the early 2000s, PMCs had become an integral part of war, especially during the US invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan, where companies like Blackwater, DynCorp, and KBR made billions providing security, logistics, and combat services. The business model: how PMCs make money. PMCs operate as businesses, meaning they seek to maximize profit. Their income comes from contracts, typically signed with governments, multinational corporations, and even private individuals who need armed protection. The primary ways PMCs make money include: 1. Government contract. The largest and most lucrative source of income for PMCs is government contracts. The US Department of Defense alone has spent hundreds of billions on private military contractors. These contracts cover a wide range of services, including security for government officials, diplomats, and military bases, logistics and supply chain management, intelligence gathering and cyber operations, combat support and training of foreign militaries during the Iraq War. Blackwater Now Academy secured contracts worth hundreds of millions to protect US officials. Similar companies provided essential services, including food supply, base construction, and even air transportation for troops. Without these PMCs, modern military operations would struggle to function efficiently. 2. Corporate clients. Large multinational corporations operating in unstable regions frequently hire PMCs for protection. Companies extracting resources in war-torn areas, such as oil, gas, and mining firms, often need armed security to protect their operations from local militias, rebels, or criminal groups. For example, in Nigeria, PMCs have been employed to protect oil fields from attacks by militant groups like the Niger Delta Avengers. These contracts can be highly profitable, as corporations are willing to pay top dollar to ensure the safety of their assets and personnel. 3. Training and advisory service. SPMs also generate income by training and advising foreign militaries, police forces, and paramilitary groups. Governments with weak military infrastructure often turn to PMCs to train their troops. This has been particularly common in African nations dealing with insurgencies. American and European PMCs have trained armies in Somalia, Mali, and Libya, shaping the outcomes of conflicts while making millions. 4. Arms dealing and equipment sales. Some PMCs extend their business beyond providing personnel by also supplying military-grade weapons, vehicles, and surveillance equipment. These companies act as middlemen in the global arms trade, selling weapons to governments and militia groups alike. This not only increases their revenue, but also deepens their involvement in conflicts, as their financial interests become intertwined with prolonged warfare. The incentive to prolong conflict. One of the most controversial aspects of PMCs is their financial interest in war. Unlike national armies, which seek to end conflicts efficiently, PMCs profit when conflicts continue. The longer the war lasts, the more contracts they secure, and the more money they make. This has led to accusations that PMCs have a vested interest in keeping conflicts alive rather than resolving them. For example, in Afghanistan, where PMCs played a massive role, Some companies were found to have paid off local warlords to ensure continued instability, thus securing their own presence and contracts. Critics argue that PMCs can act as war profiteers, benefiting from destruction rather than working toward peace. The legal and ethical challenges. One of the biggest concerns surrounding PMCs is the lack of oversight and accountability. Unlike national militaries, which are bound by international law, PMCs often operate in legal gray areas. Many contractors accused of war crimes or human rights violations have escaped prosecution due to jurisdictional loopholes. A notorious example is the 2007 Nicer Square massacre in Baghdad, where Blackwater contractors killed 17 Iraqi civilians. While some were later prosecuted, many similar incidents have gone unpunished. Additionally, PMCs can be used to carry out missions that governments want to keep off the record. Since they are not officially part of any military, they can operate in secrecy, conducting operations without public scrutiny. This allows governments to engage in conflicts indirectly, avoiding political backlash. The future of PMCs, a growing industry. Despite the controversies, the PMC industry continues to grow. As geopolitical tensions rise and conflicts become more complex, governments and corporations are increasingly turning to PMCs. The global private military industry is now worth over $200 billion and is expected to expand further. With advancements in technology, PMCs are also branching into cyber warfare, surveillance, and artificial intelligence-driven combat solutions. Some experts warn that the increased reliance on PMCs could lead to a future where wars are fought not by nations, but by private entities with no accountability. Others argue that PMCs provide essential services that governments cannot always manage on their own. In conclusion, private military companies have changed the landscape of modern warfare. They are not just soldiers for hire. They are corporations driven by profit, operating in the shadows of global conflict. While they provide crucial services, their financial incentives raise ethical questions about the true cost of war. When profit becomes the primary motivation for engaging in conflict, the line between security and exploitation blurs. PMCs may claim to bring efficiency and expertise to the battlefield, but their presence fundamentally alters the nature of war. As long as war remains profitable, peace will always be secondary. Whether the world will rein in PMCs or allow them to continue shaping the future of warfare is a question yet to be answered. One thing, however, is certain. War is no longer just about power and politics, it's about business.